Greetings from Brother Stephen. I'm a disciple and witness of Jesus Christ. To all the inhabitants of the earth, I present to you as a witness this gospel of the kingdom. In this lesson today, titled The Parable of the Guest, we will be going over Luke chapter 14, verses 7 through 14. And after this lesson, we'll be returning back to the book of Matthew, the 22nd chapter. Luke chapter 14, verses 7 through 14, beginning at verse 7. It says, "And he put forth a parable to those which were invited." Now you might say, invited to what? If you go back to the last lesson, when we covered Luke chapter 14, verses 1 through 6, the very first verse says, "And it came to pass, as he went into the house of one of the chief Pharisees, to eat bread on the Sabbath day." So he was invited to the chief Pharisee house to eat on the Sabbath day. It says, "And when he marked or noticed how they chose out the chief rooms." Now, these two word chief rooms comes from one Greek word, and that Greek word is protoklesia. Now, protoklesia, although it's one Greek word, it derives from two Greek words. And that first word is protos, which means first, and kalasia means row. So again, when you read that, it says, "When he noticed how they chose out the first row, saying unto them, When you are invited of any man to a wedding, sit not down in the first row, lest a more honorable man than you be invited of him. And he that invited you and come and say to you, Give this man place, and you begin with shame to take the lowest room." And again, that lowest room means the last row. Verse 10 says, "But when you are invited, go and sit down at the last row, that when he that invited you come, he may say unto you, Friend, go up hither, then shall ye have worship." Now again, this word worship here in the King James Version Bible actually derives from the Greek word dokoa. When you translate dokoa into a modern day English, about the closest you will get for a translation is kudos, which means then shall you have praise and honor, in reference to being ashamed. It says, "In the presence of them that sit at meat," and this word meat just means at the dining table or somewhere with you. "For whosoever exalt himself shall be abased, and he that humble himself shall be exalted." When you go to Matthew chapter 23, verses 1 through 36, the subsection of scriptures is known as woe to the scribes and Pharisees. Again, scribes and Pharisees represent church leaders of different denominations. The word Pharisee itself derives from the Greek word pharisai, and pharisai is translated from the Hebrew word parashin, and parashin means to separate or give oneself distinction. So again, if you go to Matthew chapter 23, verse 1, it says, "Then spake Jesus to the multitude and to his disciples, saying, The scribes and the Pharisees," again, these are church leaders, "sit on Moses' seat." And they sit on Moses' seat, this more kind of represents they sit in the pulpit. In other words, facing the people. If you go to Exodus chapter 18, verse 3, it gives you an explanation or example of Moses' seat. Verse 13 says, "And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses sat to judge the people." And then when you go down to verse 16, it says, "When they have a matter, they come to me, and I judge between one another, and to make them know the statutes of God and his laws." So when you get to verse 3 in Matthew chapter 23, it says, "All, therefore, whatsoever they say, you observe." This means pay attention and listen. Observe and do. So pay attention to what they say and do it. "But do not you after their works, for they say and do not. For they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne." Now, verse 4, but basically what it means when you translate that correctly, it means for they combine donkey work. And again, we talk about this in the study. Let me pull up the name of the study really quick. Zion's Coming King, when we talk about the basically the ass coat. So again, it says for they combine donkey work. And here I kind of have an image of a donkey so you can see the extremely heavy load that donkeys are made to carry. And it says, "and grievous to be borne." This grievous to be borne, again, comes from one Greek word. And that Greek word is doubastaktos. And when you translate doubastaktos to English, it just means unbearable. So again, for they combine donkey work that is just unbearable to carry, and lay them on men's shoulders. But they will not move them with one of their fingers. But all their work they do for to be seen of men. So I want to go over a few scriptures again, talking about that work that they do to be seen of men. And again, this is the behavior of hypocrites. John chapter 5, verses 39 through 47. We just go over this in the last study when Jesus heals the dropsy on the Sabbath day. Verse 43 says, I am come in my Father's name. And again, that name is Elohim. And ye receive me not. If another shall come in his name, him will you receive. How can you believe which receive honor one of another, and seek not the honor that come from God only? So again, I just added that to tie this lesson back to the last lesson. When you go to Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4, this subsection of scripture is titled Instructions in Giving. And again, we go over this subsection of scriptures in detail in the lesson titled Instructions about Giving. Verse 1 says, take heed that you do not your alms. Alms your sympathetic and compassionate deeds before men, to be seen of them. Otherwise, you have no reward of your Father which is in heaven. And again, that reward always refer to eternal life. Verse 2 says, therefore, when you do your alms, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogue. Now, this word synagogue today is what we will call church. Man-made buildings where people assemble to fellowship. So again, do not sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites in church and in the streets, that they may have the glory of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. In other words, they have their reward in this life, no reward in the next life. Verse 3 says, but when ye do alms, when you give to the poor, or do any sympathetic or compassionate deed, it says, let not your left hand And this just means anyone, know what your right hand do, that thine alms may be in secret, and your Father which see in secret himself shall reward you openly. And then again, if you go to Matthew chapter 6, verses 16 through 18, this subsection of scripture is known as proper fasting. I go over in a study I go over this subsection of scriptures in Matthew chapter 6, verses 16 through 18. It says, moreover, when ye fast, be not as the hypocrites of a sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces, that they may appear unto men to fast. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. But when ye fast, anoint thine head, and wash your face, that you appear not unto men to fast, but unto your Father which is in secret. And your Father which see in secret shall reward you openly. We're back at Matthew chapter 23, verse 5. And it says, they make broad their phylacteries. And the phylacteries, and I'll zoom in on this picture really quick. The phylacteries is this thing here on his head and on his arm. Today, you can kind of compare the phylacteries with women in the church wearing broad hats or some type of broad collar or broad flashy jewelry, and the same thing with men wearing expensive lavish suits, snakeskin shoes, expensive ties, flashy jewelry. And they enlarge the borders, with the borders, which the borders are the tassels of their garments. We kind of go over this in the again the lesson. Give me 1 second. Titled here, the Canaanite woman faith, when we cover Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 to 28. The woman, it says she touched the hem of his garment. Again, that's talking about the border of his garment. In the law, they was required to put tassels on the four corners of their garments. Verse 6 says, and they love the uppermost rooms. Again, this is the front rows at feast, and the chief seats, which is the front rows in the church. Verse 7 says, and greetings in the markets, and to be called of men rabbi, rabbi. In other words, be called by church titles. Be not ye called rabbi. Do not be called by church titles. For one is your master, one is your teacher, one is your preacher, one is your pastor, one is your shepherd, even Christ. And all you are brethren. Again, when you go back to 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 1 through 9, this subsection of scripture was known as Paul and Apollos, God's fellow workers. Verse 6 said, I have planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So then, neither is he that plant anything, neither is he that water anything, but God that give the increase is everything. Now he that plant and he that water are one. They are brethren, the same. It says, and call no man father. Again, this word father is a title that addresses a man as a priest or pastor. It says, call no man father upon the earth. Call no man priest. Call no man pastor. Call no man pope. For one is your pastor. One is your priest. One is your pope, which is in heaven. Neither be ye called masters. Again, this is a title that addresses a man as a teacher or preacher. For one is your master, your preacher or teacher, even Christ. But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. again, shall be those that places himself below you, not above you. That slave and work hard for you, not you slave and work hard for them. Verse 12 says, and whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. Again, if you go back to Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 14, this is the parable of the Pharisee and tax collector. It says, and he spake this parable unto certain which trusted in themselves, that they were righteous, and despised others. Two men went up into a temple or church to pray. The one a Pharisee, again, which represents church leaders, and the other one a publican. This represents somebody that doesn't go to church. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank you that I am not as this man, that I am not as other men are, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I possess. Verse 13 says, and the publican, standing afar off, would not lift up so much his eyes unto heaven, but smote upon his chest, saying, God, be merciful unto me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone, and again, this everyone is referring to the Pharisee, hypocrites, these church leaders, these TV evangelists, these people who desire to be television evangelists. Everyone that exalt himself, call himself pastor, preacher, teacher, apostle, father, rabbi, master, minister, shall be abased. And he that humble himself, just call himself brother, shall be exalted. Back in Luke chapter 14, verses 7 through 14, the parable of the guest, we left off at verse 12. It says, then said he also to him, and this is referring to Jesus talking to the chief Pharisee that invited him to his house. When ye make a dinner or a supper, in other words, this time out when you're celebrating, call not your friends, nor your brethren, neither your family, nor your rich neighbors, lest they also invite you again, and recompense be made you. If you go to Leviticus chapter 18, verses 1 through 5, we go over these subsections of scriptures in the study titled Tradition and Vain Worship, when we cover Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 through 9. Verse 1 says, and Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim, after the doing of the land of Egypt, wherein ye dwelt, shall you not do. So, when you go to Genesis chapter 40, verses 20, it gives you a description of a doing that the Egyptians did. Verse 20 says, and it came to pass that the third day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast, and made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler, and of the chief baker among his servants. So he was celebrating his birthday, made a dinner or a supper or a feast. And again, Leviticus says, after the doing of the land of Egypt, shall ye not do. Even talking about celebrating birthdays. And after the doing of the land of Canaan, the land of Canaan is the land of Israel, whether I bring you, shall you not do. So if you go to Mark chapter 6, verses 14 to 29, this is the beheading of Yochanan, and this takes place in the land of Canaan. It says, and when a convenient day was come, that Herod, on his birthday, made a feast, a supper, to his lords, his high captains, and his chiefs of Galilee. Now it says, neither shall ye walk in their ordinances. Ye shall not walk in the ordinance of the land of Canaan. Ye shall not walk in the ordinance of the land of Egypt. Ye shall not prescribe to their religious rites and their religious ordinances or idolatry. Verse 13 says, but when ye make a feast, when you celebrate any holiday, call the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and you shall be blessed, for they cannot recompense you. For ye shall be recompensed at the resurrection of the just. And this concludes this gospel.